Hi, this is Jay Washburn.
And I'm Joe Bondowski.
And you're listening to Start Writing.
Today, we will be doing a grammar and poetry episode. So today we're going to be discussing double and multiple negatives, when they've been used, and some of the ways you can use them in your own writing. As I mentioned before, we will talk about the hard rules of grammar, but mostly what we're going to explore are times when they've been broken effectively. So, because I think I've mentioned this before, and if not on the podcast, at least in a lot of conversations. But, a good writer knows the rules and follows them, but a great writer knows when to intentionally break them. And so that's one of the reasons we kind of want to look at grammar in that way. So this week in critiques, what I'm actually going to pull is a discussion from the Facebook group to try and give people a little bit more of a reason to go check it out and become involved. And so Monday, I wrote up this little piece about mood. And so here's the quote from the text. And this is from Jim Butcher's Fury series. It says, "Max inhaled slowly. Legions fight for the crown. A lot of people die." So that is the line. And I was looking at the line and I said, I want to look at the action beat, Max inhaled, to see if I can do something with that line to strengthen the emotional context. And so this is what I wrote. And in the Facebook group, what I do is I'm trying to put out these little prompts. And then people look at them and they adjust it themselves to kind of get the writing to do what they want. And we definitely want other people to be submitting. I put something there so that there's something there every day. But what we really want is to people say, look, I'm struggling with this line or something, and you can put it in there, or, I'd like a stronger mood or tone or whatever it is. And then the group will kind of go through and tweak it, and you'll get a variety of different perspectives. And I think, one, it'll help us all write better craft, because you'll see the way different writers approach specific elements, right? And you see how they evoke different things. So this was my change. Max's lips trembled as he inhaled, a long, slow breath, as though he feared it might be his last. Legions fight for the crown. A lot of people die.
By the way, for those of you listening, that's in quotes. That's the character saying legions fight for the crown.
Yeah. So that's what I put out on Monday. Chris, who's a member of the group, I'm not going to say his last name, just because I haven't gotten his approval to mention him directly. So he looked at it, and what he did is he actually dug up the bigger text from the novel. He Googled in my quote, found a section, and then pulled a larger chunk from the novel, and then he adjusted that. So if you go to the Facebook group, you can actually see the screenshot of the text that Chris has changed. And so this is Chris's change here. "That's good," Tavi said. He chewed at his lip. "What happens if he doesn't wake up?" Max said grimly. "Yeah." Max narrowed his eyes on Tavi. "Legions fight for the crown. A lot of people die." Tavi tried to ignore the ice that found a home in his friend's voice. "That's good," Tavi said. Oh, I double quoted it there. Where he says, "The ice that found a friend, that found a home in his friend's voice" is the end. So you can see that the beat itself that I was looking at, he changed to Max narrowed his eyes on Tavi. But he did a lot with how Tavi was interacting with Max to kind of create the mood he wanted for that specific line of dialogue. Right? So it was very different than what I came up with. And so I wanted to, we'll bring this up now and again just to kind of draw more traffic to the Facebook group. We'll look at different pieces and you'll see how all of us manipulate it. You'll see the original author, what I did, what other members of the group did, etc.
Well, and I'd like to just break this down a little. So in your version, in the original, he inhaled slowly, right? And you added the trembling lips and his thoughts on the breath.
Well,
he feared it might be his last.
Right. And so what I put was more of a metaphor, right? Because the POV character was Tavi, so it's as though he feared.
Okay.
Right.
And then what Chris did, which I like, is he basically took that extra detail that you added and he just separated it over a couple of beats. So it feels less wordy. Like you said, is that too purple? And I really like that move. I think it flows better, and yet it has that extra emotion, extra detail. I felt like Jim's line was a little flat, and so that's why I wanted to look at it.
And then I felt mine was a little too purple, but I think I like what you said. Like Chris then took what I said and essentially kind of broke that out into more parts. Like you got Max said grimly, Tavi chewed at his lip, and then Max narrowed his eyes on Tavi, and so the beat that I was kind of focusing on, he spread out between 3 different lines. So you're right, it's less wordy and it feels less purple that way. Yeah. And Chris's I think is the strongest of the 3 there because it digs in a little more deeply on the emotions, but it spread it out effectively. So.
And by the way, I haven't read this book, but I'm assuming that this line is pretty important. If this line is not very important, then I'd say just cut all of this.
Just cut all of this.
Because I think this helps to emphasize the emotional weight of it.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, you wouldn't want to do this much detail if the thing is not important. Just keep cruising.
So, fair point. Okay. So, in marketing this week... I've mentioned KDP, I think, last week. I've been using it and getting just thousands and thousands of keywords really easily, getting a lot of impressions from them. But Amazon limits you to 1,000 keywords per ad. So I've had to be writing a lot of ads, and in doing so, I have to write copy for the ad each time. And so one of the things I've been looking at and thinking about more recently is trying to make sure my keywords tend to fit with that ad specifically, as opposed to just throwing a ton of them out there. And a lot of this is going to be kind of a pruning process as well, right? So if I have an ad that maybe talks about what, the opening line is what makes a nation believe a lie, then maybe I'll focus on people who like conspiracy theories and conspiracy theory books and different things like that, because that type of ad would appeal to them more.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas
great.
If I'm looking at, comparing myself to a more of a general thriller writer like Jeffrey Deaver, then maybe I would just start with a piece of the story. When hoax causes a massive panic along the Portuguese coast, the CIA attempts to turn it into a weapon. And so that's more of a story narrative element directed at an audience who's used to buying these story type thrillers, right? And so as I'm writing all of these copy and making, all these ads to fit these keywords, I'm trying to match the copy with the audience that I'm targeting with those ads.
So for my book, Song of Lock, I've told you this, but I'll tell our listener. I have a tagline in the ad that says, it's like Legend of Zelda meets Game of Thrones. And on that specific ad, the keywords that convert the best are Breath of the Wild, Legend of Zelda, and I think George Martin.
Huh.
So anyway, you match those 2 together and conversions go up. I think.
Very cool. So, all right. So our discussion today, double and multiple negatives. So I think we should probably open with probably the most famous double negative ever, which is the line from Pink Floyd, which is, "We don't need no education." The interesting part of Pink Floyd's double negative here is that it is intentional, and they want you to dissect it by the hard rules of grammar, right? Because the hard rules of grammar say don't use a double negative. They cancel each other out. Well, the use of double negatives rarely intentionally is designed for you to cancel them out. But Pink Floyd wants you to do that cancellation. It says take the hard rules of grammar and use them to find out what we really mean. That then becomes a type of double negative that can be used. Is one that is intended to be dissective or intended to create confusion, right? Because they were trying to appeal to a rebellious audience that is very anti or dislikes school, teenagers and whatnot. They wrote that line because it would have this strong appeal to them and at the same time carry the message that they wanted, which is we need education.
So I haven't researched the lyrics at all. Did you research it, or is this just an external?
I'm vaguely familiar with it. I mean, okay. I had a few, honestly, I listened to it a few times in creative writing classes, at least twice by 2 different teachers. They had us listen to Pink Floyd's "We Don't Need No Education." So the next one, and I cannot remember where I read this line, but the line reads, "I didn't have nothing, never." And this is the line that is intended to be emphatic. This is not, it's not intended that you're going to dissect all the negatives there and see what remains. The purpose of all those negatives is just to tell you how strongly this person feels about that. Right? And this is probably the most common double negative that you'll see. We have the I can't get no satisfaction and I can't get no answers. In fact, if you type in I can't get no answers, you'll bring up like hundreds and hundreds of complaint forms. People say this a lot. I can't get no answers. Usually, awesome. Like a lot of them were like tech support, and then people would complain on the forum, like, I had this problem and I can't get no answers. So, right. But again, they're not saying I can get answers. They're frustrated. They're using the double negative for emphasis.
Well, and most of the time this is probably unconsciously for the actual speaker, but it's saying something about their education level or their background or their culture. Like, that's all embedded in that phrase, which I think is kind of cool.
So, yeah. So, and then I'm gonna go back to this. For anyone who's still in high school, you can now argue with your English teacher. Shakespeare uses double and triple negatives all the time. So there's a whole website about it. Not in love, neither is the line. Then let us say that you are sad because you are not merry. So again, there's the double negative. Not and neither. And then of course we have some great triple negatives here by Shakespeare. Nor understood none neither, sir. Actually, I'm going to read the previous line because it makes more sense. Thou hast spoken no word all this while. To which he responds, nor understood none neither, sir. So, right. But again, it's just emphasis.
Yeah. And again, you're seeing the class of the character.
You are, yeah.
Built into that phrasing. Yeah, it's sweet.
So, all right. So then, of course, we have what's called a weak positive. You're kind of defining this nuance. So did you enjoy the movie? Well, I didn't not enjoy the movie, right? Now, I'm not saying I enjoyed it. The negatives aren't canceling each other out, but rather it's this kind of in between. Because I'm not saying I didn't like it. I'm saying that I didn't not enjoy it, or, are you happy in your marriage? Well, I'm not unhappy, right? Again, there's this nuance here that you're kind of carving out with this weak positive. Finally, now this one I will have Travis switch with. So if you want to read Charming, I'll read Pinocchio. So this is from Shrek the Third, and it's this great little back and forth. It's all about the double negative for humor's purpose.
So I'm Prince Charming, and Joe will be Pinocchio.
Yeah.
You can't lie. So tell me, puppet, where is Shrek?
I don't know where he's not.
You're telling me you don't know where Shrek is?
It would be inaccurate to assume that I couldn't exactly not say that it is or isn't almost partially incorrect.
So you do know where he is?
On the contrary, I'm possibly more or less not definitively rejecting the idea that in no way with any amount of uncertainty that I undeniably
stop it!
Do or do not know where he should probably be if that indeed wasn't where he isn't. Even if he wasn't at where I knew he was. So,
that was pretty good.
Yeah, so you can see, he's just throwing negative upon negative upon negative just to throw it off. And while I guess the direct intention within the scene itself is confusion, which we talked about, the whole piece is leveraging the double negative in a humorous sense. And that is a common theme of the double negative, is because as you read a double negative, you can read it as emphatic, but you can also understand it within its self-cancellation, which is why it becomes a popular tool in humor, because it has that split meaning every time you could read it.
Yeah, it sounds like a legal document to me.
That was Pinocchio's defense there. Yeah. It does sound like a legal document. Okay. So for the poem this week, we've contacted the author. They have their own reading of it, and we'll see if we can get that. If not, then I will read the poem. So, in closing, please leave us a review if you like the show. It'll help more people find it. Share the tweets or the images on Twitter if you would. That'd be great.
And for those of you who have left reviews, thank you very much.
Yes, thanks a ton. So we do have some great reviews. Join the giveaways and share them. This month it is that 90 minutes of VO for your novella or short story. And if you enjoy this show, check out one of our books and leave a review if you do. So
thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Yep. Okay, this is hosted on poets.org, and they have produced a SoundCloud clip read by the author. And
this is Jenny Xie reading Naturalization. His tongue shorn, father confuses snacks for snakes, kitchen for chicken. It is 1992. Weekends we paw at cheap silverware at yard sales. I'm told by mother to keep our telephone number close, my beaded coin purse closer. I do this. The years are slow to pass, heavy-footed. Because the visits are frequent, we memorize shame's numbing stench. I nurse nosebleeds, run up and down stairways, chew the wind. Such were the times. All of us nearsighted. Grandmother prays for fortune to keep us around and on a short leash. The new country is ill-fitting, lined with cheap polyester, soiled at the sleeves.